Oh man, episode 7 has just ripped that band-aid off, right? We've known that they've been playing fast and loose with the lore for a long time, and there have been things that I've looked at and said you just can't come back from that, like the mithril retcon and some of this other stuff. But the reveal that happened in this episode, it was so bad. We're gonna discuss it. I'm gonna have to spin up a whole new episode about this one thing, which we're gonna talk about here in a minute. I'm Tim Anderson, aka Renfell, the bearded dwarven princess. Welcome to my channel and my review of the Rings of Power show, which goes along with my Rings of Power rant series. Today's episode, like all of the other ones before it, for those of you who have never tuned in before, has two parts to it. The reviews are at the end. There's two different reviews. One is the review from a Tolkien fan perspective. What does it look like as someone who is a fan of the series and who knows at least a little bit about the lore? And then the other review is the unbiased review of a fantasy fan. Is this like how is the show compared to other fantasy shows, and is it from an from the basically it's from the perspective of my wife who's never read the books, and does she like these episodes? One of these days I need to just get her on the show. She showed up in some of my rant videos, but she's never actually sat and done a review with me. That might happen at some point. Before we get going, don't forget, like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so that you get more updates like this. Don't forget to also join our Discord if you would like. And of course, every Monday at 11 a.m. Central Time, we do the Mondays of Middle Earth read through of The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, and The Silmarillion. So check that out. Support the channel. It's super simple. On videos like these that are uploads, just drop a super thanks down there. And on these premieres and live streams, do super chats, and join as a member of the Adventurers Guild down there for $2.99 a month. It supports my full-time content creation journey here on YouTube, so thanks so much to those of you who are doing so. So let's just get in. First and foremost, spoiler alert, I'm going to be covering the whole episode, and then we'll do the review at the end. So whole episode, review at the end. If you're new, you'll figure it out. Let's go. So we start off the episode with Galadriel somehow survived this pyroclastic flow. That's just impossible, especially when everyone and everything around her is basically dead, which is another example of this show being absolutely silly in some cases where the writers just don't give a crap about logic. But somehow Theo lived. Don't forget, he's got that hero gene, and he's as some suspect, he's one of the Witch Kings. So we're next to the Harbrooks again. Tail end of another song, which is always fun and cute. They're arriving at the next place where they normally camp for the year, only to find that it's been burned in the eruption, apparently from the Mount Doom. Sadok says that the ancestors say that sometimes these mountains will spew fire rock, but they only wake up when bad evil is coming back around again. And somber music plays as the camera pans to the stranger because, man, they really want us to think he's bad, don't they? Except Sadok wants the stranger to use his magic to heal the tree. He shouts at it to live. Flowers come back to life. There's this intense scene as the stranger tries to do something, but it doesn't work. And a tree branch falls and almost kills Nori and one of the kids. And the stranger feels horrible, and everyone now really thinks he's evil and bad and dangerous, including himself. So we got to reinforce that idea. Reinforce the idea that he's evil, right? Then we're back to Elrond negotiating with the king of the dwarves. We'll furnish your kingdom for 500 centuries with wood and game and etc. You can trust me because I'm half elven, and even though you can't trust the elves, you can trust me. Please save my people. Um, the two Durins talk. The king tells Durin in private, all creatures have to have an end. I'm not going to risk dwarven lives mining this ore that is so precious and so dangerous to mine, only to help the elves cheat death. The fate of the elves was decided long ago by minds far wiser and more far seen than ours. Defy their will, and this entire kingdom might fall. He's got a point. Then Disa, of course, all pissed off, yelling over a forge, "We're going to do it ourselves. We're going to do it in secret. He'll see the truth if we prove him wrong." Durin won't, because defying his father the king is going to teach a dangerous lesson to their children, that the words of the king can be defied. And when Elrond finds out, he is saddened, gives a speech about the elves fading, blah, 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 more bullshit. It's even more bullshit when Durin, in anger, slides the mithril rock across the table, and it lands next to the corrupted linden leaf, and the leaf starts to cure itself and becomes a pure leaf once again. And suddenly he's like changed his mind, and apparently they decide they're going to mine in secret, despite the king. Now we're back to Galadriel. And there's this scene with her and Theo as they're going through the forest, and Theo's like, "Why did they do this?" And she's like, "To make their own land a shadow realm. It's all my fault, blah, 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 blah." We're off to Elendil, overseeing the retreating people, and saddened. We haven't seen Isildur yet. He thinks his son is dead. Theo's wondering why everyone is dead. Galadriel's giving this speech to Theo about how you shouldn't celebrate killing orcs because giving light to bad deeds leads to evil within yourself. This is another one of those ridiculously self-conscious moments where she yet remains headstrong in her quest for vengeance. And it's like, if you're self-conscious enough to recognize all of these things, why aren't you a better person? A better elf? It's ridiculous. We find out that the king has been blinded. The queen, sorry. We find out that the Queen Muriel, has been blinded because of the pyroclastic flow, which leads her father's prediction to come to pass because he did tell her, if you go to Middle Earth, you will be. Oh, he says only. What did he say? Only darkness awaits you in Middle Earth. And of course, some of us were assuming different type of darkness, like death. But she has been blinded. So yeah, darkness was awaiting her in Middle Earth of a kind, from a certain point of view. Yeah. We're back to Sadok, who's offering the stranger a star map, saying that these stars haven't been seen in more than 1,000 years when my ancestors lived in unknown places. He tells him that there's big folk living off that way beyond the forest, and maybe they'll know more. Go ahead and get on out of here with your star map and leave us alone. Only Nori appears sad to see him go, and she offers him an apple for his journey, and he sadly takes it and goes off. Now here we get to the part that most heavily influenced me during this episode. It's the part I was mentioning at the beginning of the episode. I'm not going to be able to get past this. I'm not. I need a moment. I'm not going to be able to get past this. So, as much as the Mithril retcon was a deal breaker for me, this right here is worse than the Mithril retcon, and I'm going to be spinning up an entire episode just about this. So, bear with me. I may do it later today after the review, because this is just ridiculous. All right? Ridiculous. There's this speech between Theo and Galadriel as they're hiding in the forest. He's like, "Have you ever lost someone close to the orcs?" And she says, "My brother Finrod and my husband Celeborn." Fuck you. Seriously. No. You can't do that. Now, hang on, because I am gonna. There is a. They gave themselves an out here because she gives this speech about how, he was bumbling with his armor, and that was the last time I ever saw him. So, did they actually kill him, or did she just never see him again? Because she says that the orcs killed him. You know, because Theo's asking her, "Did you ever lose someone to the orcs?" And she says, "I lost my brother and I lost Celeborn, but that was the last time I saw him." So, are they leaving themselves room for Celeborn to come back, and that's going to be the saving grace that brings Galadriel out of her funk? I'm going to do a whole episode about this, but my initial gut reaction to this when she says that Celeborn is dead and the orcs took him from me, I got to cry bullshit on this because the 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 idea that she's not, that's where Arwen comes from, and Arwen, that's the part of the core storyline of Lord of the Rings. And as far as I understood things, the writers here are under a strict, the showrunners are under a mandate from the Tolkien estate to not do anything that contradicts the main lore of Lord of the Rings. And unless Simon Tolkien is completely off his rocker and blinded by the amount of money that Amazon gave his family, unless the Tolkien estate has just completely gone down the path of, accepting gifts from Sauron, this only makes sense if, in the grand scheme of the 5 seasons of the show, we find out that Celeborn's actually not dead, and her assumption, because she's never seen him since then, that he was killed by the elves, and maybe they're going to retcon this to where Celeborn was a prisoner for all of these years and so on and so forth. We don't know that yet, but the initial reaction to this was piss off. Like, as bad as the Mithril retcon was, the fact that you've killed off Celeborn, mm-mm, mm-mm. Mm-mm. Anyway, back to the mines. Again, there's going to be a full episode about that coming out in. I might just do it today, right after this episode. So stay tuned for that because it'll probably be a couple hours after this. I'll have it out on you. Matter of fact, I'm going to confirm it right now. I'm going to go do the Celeborn episode. So after this review, there's going to be a Celeborn episode. This comes out at whenever 6:30 in the morning. I'll have something out by like 9 a.m. Central because it's worthy of talking about. Um, Back to the elves. They're mining in secret. Elrond and Durin. There's the mother lode. They open up a hole in the wall, and there's this massive vein that goes down, and it just branches. It's just mithril ore as far as the eye can see. They're celebrating, and here comes the king, and they kick Elrond out. He is now banished. There's a huge fight between the Durins, and the king pulls the chain, whatever it's called, the crest off of his son's neck, and says, You're no longer a prince." All right. Nori wakes up, finds out that the forest has been healed, and the stranger's magic did indeed work. So the Harfoots are crazy, celebrating, gathering in the woods, happy, happy, happy. Suddenly, they see a foot in the mud. Poppy freaks out. Bucket floats downstream. We see the acolytes. The Harfoots are hiding. Acolytes are gathering around the tree that the stranger healed, sensing its magic. They start to track the stranger, and Nori reveals herself, bursting out of the bush and saying, "Oh no, he went that way." And then suddenly they disappear, only to reappear, and they don't say anything. They still haven't said anything, and they're looking out over the Harfoots. And Nori's dad stands up with a torch and says, "I'll brain the three of you if you think to harm my daughter." And they take the flame from the torch, suck it out, and then blow it out and burn all the Harfoots' villages down. So yeah, bye bye little Harfoot wagons. Um, The next scene here is Elendil pissed off because his son's missing, saying, "We should have left Galadriel in the sea where I found her because she's only brought ruin to my people." There's failure here. Elendil and the Queen are talking about leaving. A garrison is going to remain behind to escort the Southerners to a safe settlement. And then Galadriel appears crying. And the Queen suddenly changes her mind and makes an oath and says, "Numenor will return." And Elendil is pissed off. Galadriel's like, "The elves will be ready when you make your return." And then we're off to the Harfoots again, where we get this speech that we saw in the preview where Nori's dad is like, "We face things with our hearts that are even bigger than our feet." It just feels so forced. Like, it's meant to be this moving dialogue sequence, but the way it comes off, at least for me, it felt forced. Um, I don't know. But Nori and Poppy decide that they're going to go off and find the stranger and warn him about the acolytes. And Sadok's like, "You're going off path now." And Nori's mom decides that she wants to go, and the tribe decides that Sadok's going to go with them. Um, I don't know. Apparently, they're off to find the stranger. Now we see the Queen on a ship riding back to Numenor, sailing back to Numenor. Galadriel's going to report to Gilgalad. The humans want to settle in Pelargir, which is a lore drop, which is interesting. I actually just did the Pelargir mission in Lord of the Rings Online, the MMORPG, about a month ago. I actually did a standalone episode here on my YouTube channel for the mission that you go with Aragorn and you liberate the port at Pelargir ahead of the fight for Minas Tirith and the Battle of. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's a lore drop. We find that Halbrand's been gravely wounded in a tent. His wounds need Elvish medicine, so Galadriel's going to take him with her. And we're back to Disa and Durin talking about how bad the king is, and he's grown too old, too suspicious, his mind too feeble, his eyes too dim to see, and Disa's pissed. "This kingdom's going to be yours, not your brother's, not some other dwarfs, and we will rule. That mithril belongs to us." The next scene is the king chucking the linden leaf through the hole that they burst and it falling down. He's like, "Seal up the hole." It falls down, goes all the way down to the bottom, bursts into flames, and then we get the Balrog reveal, Durin's Bane. Which, to me, I need to find out what Chris thinks about this in totality, because she hasn't watched the episode yet. Um, it felt so forced. It felt forced. I don't know, just that reveal. The Balrog reveal should be something epic, but the way it was done was just like, oh yeah, the Balrog's down there still, and he's pissed, Rawr, and like, all right, whatever. And then the show ends with Adar telling the orcs, you can take your helmets off. We have our own lands now. You don't have to fear the sun, but we're no longer going to call it the Southlands. We're going to call it something else. And then the camera pans away and looks towards the Mount Doom, right? And and we see up in the top left the name changes from Southlands to Mordor, which was everyone knew this last episode, but I called this all the way back at the very beginning when we first saw the symbol on the map, and I was like, oh yeah, that's the symbol for Mordor. Those are the mountain ranges, and that's Mordor. Um, so biased Tolkien fan review. This is the first time I've done this. I have given this show up to 5 out of 10 for lore throughout because there have been some nice drops here and there. The lowest I've rated an episode was the Mithril Retcon one, which I think I gave. Was it 3? I think I gave it a 3 out of 10 because there were still some redeeming moments. I'm giving this one a 1 out of 10. This was by far the most ridiculous episode in terms of straying from and breaking Tolkien's lore. Now, this mostly revolves around the Celeborn is no longer around. This only works. The only way that works in terms of not contradicting existing lore, the only way it works is that if she assumes he's dead, and he's actually going to come back later on. And again, more on this in the episode that's going to be coming out. But because of that, on top of all the other things, it's like this stacked effect that's been happening over the culmination of these episodes until we got to here. I'm giving this one a 1 out of 10. This was by far the worst episode of the series in terms of taking Tolkien's lore and just flushing it down the toilet. From a fantasy perspective, a generic fantasy perspective, I actually think this is another episode that's like a 7 out of 10. And I know some people are like, how are you able to do that, Tim? How can you possibly rate it 1 out of 10 for the lore, but then give it a 7 out of 10? Because again, from a storyline perspective, the way it all flows together, we're ramping up. This is the penultimate episode, right? We are ramping up towards the end. We have a lot of storylines coming to a conclusion here. We have some very fast-paced stuff happening. We get a conclusion to the relationship between the two Durins, and we very much see that Disa and Durin are probably going to start a rebellion against the king of some type. We get the reveal of the Balrog, which even though I didn't care for the reveal of the Balrog, for a lot of people who have seen the movies but never read the books, that's going to be a huge, huge moment for them. Excuse me, and it ties them into the films, to Peter Jackson's films. So that was cool. The Harfoot storyline, the fact that Sadok now wants to go off and help the kids find the stranger, that's also kind of cool. So again, from a storyline perspective, great visuals, great music by Bear McCreary. The orcs are really cool. I liked the sequence where Galadriel and Theo are hiding, and the orcs are like, we thought we heard something, smell something there with the torches. Oh, it's nothing but ash, ash, nothing but ash. And just that scene it felt very real to me. So there were some redeeming qualities throughout this, which is why I give it this one. Definitely gives it a 7 out of 10 for just generic fantasy show. But from a lore perspective, 1 out of 10. So bad. Love to hear your thoughts, comments below. Drop them down below. Thanks so much. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon. To support this channel, it's super simple. Drop a super thanks down there. On live streams and premieres, you can do super stickers, and of course, join the Adventurers Guild down there, $2.99 a month for the membership option. Stick around, because after this, for those of you who are watching this right now, in a couple of hours, I'm going to have this Celeborn episode out. We're going to rant about that some more for another rant video, which I don't ever do rant videos on Fridays, but we're going to do another rant video on Friday today and talk about it. So hopefully we'll see you there for that after this. In any case, I know I typically sign off by saying happy viewing. I know it's going to be really hard with this episode for some people, but if you can, again, try to see the good where you can. I like to give credit where credit is due. That's why I said 7 out of 10 for the generic fantasy show, but the lore components, it's really bad. really bad. Like I thought the Mithril retcon was bad, but telling us that Celeborn is dead is so bad. It's so bad that I got to go do a whole episode about it. See ya.